Welcome back, guys. It's Crazy Welder. In today's video I'm going to be going over a slightly more simplified version of rooting your Xiaomi projector. Now in the previous videos I kind of went, I think, a little bit too far into some of the different details, so I'm going to try and simplify the steps and hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to follow. So let's start off with some of the things that you're going to need. For one, I think it's really imperative that you get a couple of different USB sticks for these projectors when you start doing this root method. Now, a couple of them may work, some of them may not. You just kind of want to get a bunch, basically get at least 5, and try different USB sticks when you're trying to copy files to them. The other part that I recommend is actually having a mouse. Now, you don't need a wireless mouse necessarily. You can just use a wired mouse as well. It'll just make it a little bit easier. It is not a must, but it is good to have. So now let's go over to the PC so we can get it set and prepped for everything that we need to do so that you can run the ADB and TWRP recovery stuff to be able to get the projector rooted. So alright, ladies and gentlemen, so again, now you're going back to the PC and we're going to go ahead and navigate to this website, and we're going to need to get a couple of things off of this website to continue with what we need to do. But first and foremost, what you want to do is you want to scroll down until you basically see the list of supported devices. Now this is going to be important because it's going to determine which files we're going to get from here first. Now, in my case, because I have now the 4K Batman projector by Xiaomi, I'm going to get the Batman files from down below. If you have the Xiaomi 1080p projector or even the WiMAX projector, you're going to get the Rain Man files down below. There are also those for the Mija Youth projector as well, which are going to be a little bit separate, that have their own file that you can use. And again, just look through here to get what you need to get. Now, the other part we're going to get is the actual app that allows us to switch inputs and allows us to also have a very minimal interface on the projector itself. Now, you can get them one of two places. You can go over to Aptoide or you can get it straight from here. I recommend just downloading it from here because Aptoide, as far as I can tell, only has version 3.0.0, whereas in here you have version 3.56. Now, I have found that I need to also install version 2.17 first on the projector before it's able to actually install the later versions of the app for one reason or another. So I'd recommend just picking up one of these first just in case, so that you have that as a backup in case for whatever reason versions 3.0 and up don't end up installing. Now, you're also going to continue scrolling in here because, like I said, we actually need to get the TWRP recovery files here. So again, just look for the Batman or Rain Man or Zodiac, whichever ones happen to be appropriate for your projector, and you're going to go ahead and download those. Now, the next step that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to grab Magisk. This is what actually allows us to perform the root. And so again, just go ahead and grab the Magisk zip file for the latest version that it happens to be during that time, and again, just go ahead and download that and drag it over straight to your USB stick. No need to extract anything, just drag it over as is. And last but not least, on the PC side, we're going to need to take a look at having ADB, or in this case, minimal ADB works great on the PC. Now, if you don't have a PC and you're on Mac or Linux, go ahead and head back to that forum and you're going to go ahead and look for the link to the other OS versions of ADB, and for the time being you are going to be done. So in essence, what you're going to see is you're going to see a USB stick. Now, you can ignore some of the other stuff on here, but basically you're going to see your Projector Tools app, which is version 3.56, and potentially you may see the older version in here as well if you downloaded that as I recommended, and then Magisk itself as well. This will essentially allow you to have that on there, and the last file you will have in here is the actual TWRP recovery file that we're going to need to allow us to essentially modify the projector itself, which is basically just going to look like a recovery.img, and that will basically conclude the steps that we need to do on the PC for now before we head on over to the projector. Alrighty then, folks, so now that we're in here, I'm going to do this as if you are starting from scratch down here. So I'm just going to say yes, this is fine, and we're going to go ahead and say yes, this is also okay. Now, we're also going to check a couple of other settings. They ask you to do a couple of things here before you can continue. So this is also okay. Now, this step right here, you can just skip it. You don't really need to do anything for that selection menu. So again, we're just going to wait. I'm going to click continue. Now, this is a section where it's going to take you into the Chinese menu, so that's going to be a little bit confusing in the beginning just to, be able to navigate all this stuff. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to scroll around until you are actually seeing a menu, and so you're going to get yourself to this screen. So now that you've got to this stage, you're going to go ahead and open your USB. In my case, it is this particular USB stick. Now, I recommend to install the English menu settings so that you can make a lot more sense of what's actually going on the actual projector. I'm also going to link the APK for that in my video description as well. Again, you can drag and drop it onto the USB, and that'll just make things a little bit easier for you. The specific APK that's going to be called is startsettings.apk. So we're going to go ahead and click to install that, and that's going to make it a lot easier for us to be able to actually install all of the applications. And then once you do this, I'm going to go ahead and click install and go ahead and just follow the specific instructions that I've given you there. Now, once you get to this specific section, we're going to kind of keep scrolling until you see this icon with a planet. And I'm going to keep going, and then we're going to look for, and it's going to be right up here, the English settings, and you're going to toggle that. And now, as you can see everything in English. Makes it just a little bit easier to navigate basically everything. Plus, this gives you access to the base Android settings. And this is going to be really important actually for the next section, because in this particular area, and actually we can go ahead and update that, that is fine. What we're going to need to be able to do is we're going to need to go under the About This Phone section, and we're going to keep going here, and then we're going to go under the build number, and then you're going to select this a bunch of times. Just basically keep clicking OK on your remote. So it's going to be this center button in here. Once you've done that, you go back, and then we're going to take a look at the developer options. And what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, and you're going to enable USB debugging. This is going to be critical for us to be able to gain ADB access into the machine. And again, this is a section where I strongly recommend for you guys to actually have the machine connected over an Ethernet cable. Now, some people say that it's fine to have a Wi-Fi connection, but again, I strongly recommend having an actual full Ethernet connection on your device. In my case, you can see that the Ethernet is connected, and what we're going to do now is we're going to head back to the PC, and this is the part where we're going to be able to actually launch ADB on the projector so we can boot into the USB and start the TWRP recovery. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now back on your PC, you're going to search for ADB, and we're going to look for a minimal ADB fast boot, and we're going to get this little prompt. Now, you're going to pause right here, and what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your projector, and you're going to check the IPv4 address on the projector. So let's go ahead and do that now, so we can make sure that we have an input in here that we can use. So again, on our projector, what we're going to do is we're going to get back to that settings menu. We're going to go into the main projector settings menu. You're going to click on whether you're Wi-Fi or Ethernet. You're going to click on the specific connection that you're using, and you're going to make sure that you note down the 10.0.0.103 or whatever your address happens to be in IPv4. Alright, so once again, going back to ADB, now that we've got our IP address, we're going to go ahead and click ADB Connect. We're going to replace this next section with the IP address of our projector. In my case, it's 10.0.0.103. And in here, after this, I'm going to hit 5555. I'm going to click enter. Now, the first thing that's going to happen on here is you're going to actually see that on your projector, it's going to ask you to connect and allow USB debugging. So you're going to click OK, and you're basically going to click OK one more time. Once this happens, you're basically going to check ADB one more time, and then you can see that it's actually running. And so we can see in here that everything is okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to run the actual application that we have on our USB in order to get the computer to get going. So we're going to type in ADB reboot update, and you're going to go ahead and hit enter, and we're going to give that a second. So now back to our projector here, you're going to see that we have the menu for the recovery system so that we can actually be able to finally do the step for using the TWRP recovery. At this point, it is a good idea to plug in your mouse so that you can actually use the slider. Alternatively, if you can't use the mouse, you can try also plugging in the controller. That typically can work as well to allow you to actually click that slider. So once you're at this stage, you're going to select the backup option, and you're basically going to select a couple of things in here, the bootloader and the recovery, and you're going to click swipe to backup, and then go ahead and let this run for a while. Again, depending on your projector, it may take a very short amount of time, it may take a long amount of time, but just let this continue. Alright, so you're going to reach this menu, you're going to click the back arrow, you're going to back up one more time, you're going to go into mount, and you're basically going to select, but usually I just select the USB drive itself, and then basically select that storage. Once again, select USB. Once you've selected this, you're going to go back and you're going to click install. And in here, you should see, if you put Magisk in the correct directory, you should see it in here. As you can see, there it is. And I usually like to click reboot after installation is complete, and then swipe to confirm flash and let this run. And then once that's done, once again, just go ahead and say reboot system. So now after you reboot, you want to make sure that you see this image where it basically tells you install Magisk APK. You're going to click apply all, and you're going to click OK. And you're going to give that a little bit of time before that completes. And then what you can also do is you can go in here and you can check the applications. And then what you should be seeing in here is you should see the Magisk Manager. We're going to go into the USB one more time, and we're going to look at the specific app that we want to install. So we're going to try and install this 3.56 application, and then we're going to click install and see if that lets us continue. And in theory that should work just fine. So now what we can do is we can go into the Projector TV Tools app, and then you're going to go ahead and grant it the access rights for super user. This is going to be extremely important. And then basically just go ahead and click grant, and I don't know if I actually did there or not. It looks like I just skipped it by accident, but that's okay. Alright, so in order to fix this, if you didn't end up clicking on it on time, you're going to go into the settings menu. You're going to keep scrolling until you see accessibility. So it's going to be this little person, and then what you're going to do is you're going to scroll up a little bit, and as you can see, the app has it set to off. So you're going to click and you're going to enable to on, and basically at this point you click OK, and now you can basically hit the home menu. Okay, so now you're going to go into the application, finally, the Projector TV Tools app. You're going to check for root access, which should say that your device is rooted. Now you're also going to make sure that you do the custom props overwrite so that you can do additional kind of options. This is good to have just in case you have some additional things that you want to run. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to basically install some additional applications on here to allow us to fully take advantage of removing the stock launcher as well as all the crappy bloatware apps. The first thing we need to do is install the Aptoide TV Store, so let's do that here and go ahead and install. Now it's going to ask us for a couple of updates as well. That's no big deal. Okay. I'm going to click done. Now usually what I like to do in here is I like to basically go back and I like to click into the Aptoide TV Store, because sometimes it requires some updates to actually continue running to install some additional apps for us. So let's take a look, make sure, click OK, allow it access, click OK to update, and go ahead and update the app. And now that that's updated, we can go back into the Projector TV Tools one more time, and we're going to install the final last bit of applications that we'll need. Now you have a couple of different options in here. Now, I personally like Kodi and Plex just to be able to stream some additional stuff, but the most important part is to be able to install your first launcher, which is going to take over the stock MIUI launcher over everything. Now, I believe that YouTube and Netflix, as well as Amazon, are a little bit glitchy, so I'd recommend using it with something like your Xbox or a different kind of device to give you access to those. However, if you do manage to find older versions, those can work okay, but some content that's specifically in 4K or has HDR is going to probably give you some problems, as it has given me a couple of issues. So again, kind of use that at your own risk as far as that's concerned. But again, you know, basically it's one of those things where sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, and this is where having a mouse as well comes in handy, because you can easily quickly click, I should say, on the different options for this. And go ahead and wait for this to finish up in here. Once this is done, we're going to go ahead and freeze the stock apps, and you're going to select freeze suggested packages. This is going to freeze all that bloatware that's running in the background so that you no longer have that slowing your projector down, which just makes the UI run a lot smoother, a lot sleeker. We're going to let this kind of continue. Now, also, the other thing to mention is that there are different user modes that allow you to basically control kind of what sort of input latency you're going to see, and I'll try and describe those as we go through this a little bit later on. Okay, and one of the other steps we're going to do is we're going to freeze the launcher. We're going to freeze the stock launcher. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to click OK. And now we are also going to check for a couple of other things in here, just so that we are able to finalize the install. And now that we've frozen all that stuff, the last thing that you're going to need to do is basically install the Google Play services. This is going to be important if you want to run basically anything regarding YouTube, Google Play Store, etc. And these do take a little while to install, so you just have to kind of hang out at the screen until it is fully done. And now finally, with the Google Play stuff installed, if we go back into the sort of primary menu, what you're actually going to see is the Apple TV launcher, and you can select that as the always used launcher. And now this is going to be the UI that you see all the time. As you can see, a lot cleaner, a lot less kind of stuff in the background, and you can always launch the Projector TV tools if you need to. You can also launch into the device settings, and then alternatively the Android settings if for whatever reason you need to go back into ADB, which at that point you'll just simply need to go back in here, enable USB debugging, and run through the ADB steps as we did previously. But as you can see, this is basically the extent of the system. You're now rooted and up and running, and you can pretty much just install whatever you want at that point. And then of course you have the menu options to be able to do different various settings, to be able to control different things. You can also long hold on your kind of third option from the right on the controller, which is basically the one after the left arrow, and this allows you to basically do keystone correction, 3D options, as well as go into more settings to basically check on things like the display. And again, you can take a look at various projector parameters. Now, if you do want to actually reduce the input latency on the device specifically, you have a couple of options for this, as well as the display profiles, and it's better to use this specific basically display profile in order to get that to run. So for example, you know, you can turn off things like noise reduction and deinterlacing, and this will speed up the projector pretty quickly, and it will change a number of settings for you. Now, as far as actually changing which display mode you're in, you're going to have to connect to a different input first. So you're going to need to go, for example, into your HDMI 1 input if you have something connected. In my case, you know, nothing is connected right now, and then you'll be able to see that you have multiple different settings in here and picture profiles. Now, the basically fastest one that you can use is the user mode, and in here you can essentially basically just select what sort of advanced settings you want. And if you turn on things like dynamic contrast and dynamic, I believe, what is this one? Dynamic color and contrast. That'll also speed things up for you significantly. And then you also have basically different color modes as well. You can change the gain, and any of these basics, you know, you're going to be able to also modify as well. Typically, the standard movie and picture modes don't necessarily really allow you too much of a change, but again, the user setting will allow you the fastest kind of input latency across the board. And as you can see, again, you've got full access to all of the apps, as well as things like your 4K UI rendering, the zoom, and additional settings for the device, including the engineering menu. And if for whatever reason the Google apps aren't working, you can also go ahead and just uninstall them. So that's basically all it is to this particular mod. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and feel free to take a look at the video in your own spare time, and just be able to do this so that your projector looks nice and clean and also runs a lot faster. And until next time, it's Crazy Welder, so feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in my next one.